Metroid, a series I greatly respect even though the first game received one of my lowest ratings so far. It went 5 years without a sequel, so Metroid II was a nice surprise for Metroid fans. It was also a surprise that it was on the Game Boy instead of a home console. Metroid's title screen was groundbreakingly dark and creepy, and Metroid II successfully brought that over to the Game Boy. I really don't like this music, unfortunately, even though that's the main factor for the creepiness. The constant clashing high notes would be more effective with more restraint. I find them overused. Considering hardware limitations, it makes sense that there's no story preview on the title screen this time, and the developers opted to use the memory for as much gameplay as possible. Samus's first mission was to stop the Metroid invasion on planet Zebes, and the mission ended with a warning that the other Metroid may invade soon. This time the mission is clear once again: eliminate all Metroids in the galaxy by attacking their home planet SR-388. Samus's first appearance in this game is even grander than before. This time we get to see her ship, which is so big that it doesn't even fit within the screen. And you practically can't beat the theme for the surface of SR-388 as far as 8-bit music is concerned. The beginning of the game serves as a subtle tutorial as Samus takes a tunnel deeper into the planet. Only simple enemies are presented to start off, and you'll have to blast through some blocks in the path which teach you to shoot up and down as well. There are some major differences to Samus's starting gear too. Metroid 1 started off very bare bones with only 30 HP out of a possible 99, and thankfully Metroid 2 starts at full health. She also has her Morph Ball form available from the beginning, which allows her suit to condense into a ball and roll under small gaps. She has a secondary ammunition available from the beginning, with 30 missiles to use. These are stronger but limited, unlike her regular arm cannon beams. It's worth noting that this beam shoots across the whole screen, as Metroid 1's long beam upgrade was already scrapped and integrated as standard. At the bottom of the screen at all times, you'll see 3 very important numbers. On the left is your health, with a maximum of 99, and as you explore, you can find energy tanks to increase the capacity in increments of 100. By design, the number still only displays up to 99, with squares on the left representing the tanks you've collected, and if they're active. The middle number is of course missiles. You can also find missile packs to add to this total in increments of 10, previously giving only 5. And on the bottom right, a Metroid counter. This counts down from 39, and to beat the game, you need to find them all. No Metroids can be left alive. This series pioneered its own genre of 2D exploration, forcing players to find exciting items that allow progression. The sequel forces you to search almost everywhere just to beat the game, even if you don't collect all of Samus's upgrades. In fact, you should find a Metroid before you even find an item. The Metroid rises from its shell and... oh, that's no ordinary Metroid. Samus witnesses its morph into the Alpha Metroid stage, which has an insect-like appearance, still flying around with ease despite its lack of wings. To defeat this form, all you need are 5 missiles, nice and simple for now. In fact, that's easier than the well-known larval stage of Metroids, which needed to be frozen with the Ice Beam before taking missiles. It seems like this stage of mutation hasn't worked out for the Metroids yet, although once they're past the larva form, they are immune to ice. After their first Alpha Metroid is defeated, the entire planet shakes. Interesting, their home planet gets mad as you kill them off. Whenever the screen shakes, this means a new area has opened up inside the planet, so you always know you're done with an area if you see the shaking. You could just turn back now, but it's a Metroid game, so you'd be a fool not to explore the rest of the Alpha Metroid's path. No items yet, but you can fully recharge your energy and missiles, a new and welcome feature in this game. Metroid 2 turns into one of those games that's big and impressive for the Game Boy, and succeeds in being weirdly relaxing to play regardless of the creepy themes. Searching for items in Metroids is vastly improved thanks to the added refill stations, save points, and overall lower difficulty. If you want players to explore everywhere, you shouldn't make everything a chore to get through. I didn't enjoy that the game's toughest challenge is locating all the Metroids though. Getting stuck isn't fun. If you know of any good guides, the game is calling for you to use them. I had to reference a guide very often to see what I was missing, and I didn't find any good guides myself. From very early on, there are cheap tricks like unmarked holes in the wall leading to key items and often Metroids. This isn't new in the series, but that doesn't make it reasonable. It's just disappointing that these are used to artificially extend the game, especially this early. The beginning sections aren't especially difficult, and every time you find an Alpha Metroid, it's more or less the same fight. The other enemies aren't overly dangerous either, so aside from finding everything, it's easy. In this case, I wish Nintendo had embraced the idea of making it an easier game instead of adding roadblocks. The oddities don't stop there. I love music, and this game does not. In the primary locations to look for Metroids, the music is just quiet sounds, not resembling anything melodic. By my estimation, over half of the game is spent this way. There are 3 different ambient tracks used, some of them more grating than others. Most of these Metroid caverns are also home to a Chozo temple, or at least their ancient ruins. The ancient Chozo species built many strange statues, some of which are now holding key items for Samus. Other than this, not much is currently known about the sage-like Chozo after 2 games. Their temples have some wacky music to go with them too. Apparently a lot of people think it's a silly tune, and, well, I agree with that, but I actually like it a little. I guess it doesn't suit the creepy vibe of entering the Metroid's home, but I would rather have this mysterious song than a non-song, even if it is silly. The first Chozo temple is a big one, with plenty of missile pods easily available, and some other key items too. Across the whole game, the items feel really fun, which wasn't necessarily true in the first game. There were 39 Metroids to find at the beginning, and if my count is correct, there are also 39 items to collect. 22 of these are missile pods, and 6 are energy tanks, only 5 of which can be used. That leaves the other 11 to help out Samus in other unique ways. The first major items are the Morph Ball bombs and the Ice Beam. These aren't new, and their functions should be fairly self-explanatory. Not long after this, we get an exciting new item, the Spider Ball. I love the idea here, and it's nice to give Samus more abilities in her Morph Ball form. The Spider Ball allows the Morph Ball to stick to every surface, which enables a whole new level of exploration. A lot of attention was given to Samus's movement options in this game, which makes it fun to control. Perhaps the Spider Ball would be more fun if it were faster, but it's not offensively slow. Plus, it's working against gravity. It's an added challenge too, since she can be knocked off the walls and ceilings after a single hit from an enemy. Let's talk about the other movement abilities too. Later on, the high jump boots return, and they allow Samus to jump shockingly high here. Maybe this extra height wasn't necessary, but I certainly found it fun. We also have the introduction of the spring ball, and now Samus can finally jump while she's in ball form. And then there's yet more jumping ability gained from the space jump. With overly specific timing, this item allows Samus to get a full jump again when she's already in the air. If you can find the right timing, you can indeed chain jumps together infinitely. It only activates with a rolling jump, much like the screw attack, which also returns near the end of the game, and it's super powerful. Jump into enemies and tear them to shreds with these bolts of electricity. Genuinely a delightful combination of items. These all made the exploration problems a little better to deal with. There were also new beams added to the mix to go with the returning Ice Beam and Wave Beam. If you're familiar with later games in the series, these beams don't stack and just replace each other as you collect them. If you hadn't guessed by now, the Ice Beam freezes all non-Metroid enemies, and the Wave Beam travels in a wavy pattern. Perhaps less obviously, but very usefully, the Wave Beam is not stopped by walls. The first new beam to test is the Spazer, which is also known as the Wide Beam because its trio of projectiles takes up a wider range. The final and most powerful beam is the Plasma Beam, which doesn't freeze enemies, doesn't pass through walls, and isn't wide, but its power is enough to destroy any non-Metroid enemy. In one of the later Chozo temples, you can choose which beam you want to carry with you into the endgame, which is a nice touch. Now, these items are exciting, and there was a lot to go over. The game is very big, so there's a lot more to cover in the map. Except there really isn't. There isn't much of a difficulty curve, staying mostly flat and easier as mentioned before. The areas all look a little different, but they still feel the same. Going around exterminating all the Metroids doesn't really change throughout the game aside from those pesky moments of metamorphosis. That's right, they weren't going to stop at Alpha Metroids. That form was too much of a pushover, and as we watched at the beginning of the game, you'll eventually watch the awkward Alphas become ghastly Gammas. This evolution is successfully more dangerous as they have a new attack and are significantly bigger. The long stinger swings around to hit Samus and even block her missiles. And it takes 10 of those missiles to kill them now too. Gamma Metroids add a slightly new challenge, and some of them are found in precarious locations for added difficulty, but it's still not that hard to land 10 missiles. So how about 20? As the Metroid count drops lower, you'll start to see them morph into Zeta Metroids, which look more like rats with hideous open faces. These are a much bigger challenge given the way they jump around, and you can no longer shoot them from below. It's pretty mean when they decide to float directly above you. Now, in the endgame, I really appreciated the effort to make it feel different. Even though the background has always been dark, this somehow feels even darker, and we finally have a new tune which is very ominous. With 4 Metroids left on the counter, Samus enters the area known as the Omega Nest because she will encounter 3 Omega Metroids. These look similar to Zeta Metroids, but much bigger, and the battles last a long time as they take 40 missiles to defeat. And now the counter sits at 1. The final area shifts to a different creepy tone and presents as some kind of science lab. Did the Chozos create Metroids in an experiment? A statue gives Samus the Ice Beam and she'll need to take it, which can only mean one thing. That last Metroid must be a larva, a classic enemy in gaming. You take a tunnel underneath an egg and the game briefly pauses as the counter increases to 9 and the egg hasn't even hatched. No, that certainly isn't good news, especially not with that key change in the music. Deeper into the lab we go, and yep, that's a Metroid larva charging at you. This form needs to be frozen with the ice beam before shooting it with 5 missiles, and they're very dangerous as they will attach themselves to your head and drain your energy. However, in true Metroid II fashion, that's nowhere near as scary as before. If you keep screw attacking with them attached to you, they won't hurt you, and they will let go if you can get out of the room. You do have to defeat them all though, that's why you're this deep into the planet. I am happy that this area is linear, so the Metroid larvae are on your path, and once again the counter drops to 1. Here we go. Let's wipe out the last Metroid. Oh no! What is that? That, dear player, is the Queen Metroid. Someone isn't happy that all her children died. The good news is that she can't fly, but the bad news is how huge she is. I have no idea what's going on with the Queen Metroid anatomy and what on earth everything is for. At least it's easy to tell where her mouth is, and that's where you'll need to aim. Her extremely long neck moves in disturbing ways and can easily extend out so she can chomp you. This gives the best opportunity to spray as many missiles as possible. I couldn't possibly count for myself, so research suggests that she takes a staggering 150 missiles to defeat. This was the only time in the game that I died. Before this point, I had only heard the low health alert once early on. There is an alternative strategy that I didn't record. Apparently you can roll into her mouth with the morph ball and bomb her stomach. 1 bomb to the stomach deals the same damage as 30 missiles. This is a really cool function, so it was worth mentioning even without footage. Metroid II is one of the most important games in the series, both for the items that redefine Samus's skills and the story. This is just the introduction of Planet SR388 and the different evolutions of Metroids. But there's still one stage of Metroid life that you haven't seen yet. The Queen Metroid was guarding it. When she's defeated, the game still isn't over, although there's no more danger. Remember that egg you glimpsed earlier? Now we have access to it and, oops, merely brushing up against it caused it to hatch. This is the baby Metroid. It's a little confused. Samus caused it to hatch, so now the baby thinks Samus is its mother. There are strange blocks in the way of Samus escaping, and the baby can eat them for her. I guess this is a safe Metroid. Nothing bad could possibly happen if Samus left the planet with the baby on her ship. So now the game really is over, and based on the time you took, you'll get a slightly different animation for Samus as the credits play. I got the second best ending this time. Of course, the fastest times get the famous bikini ending, now in glorious black and white. I'm definitely impressed by the size of this game, and the concept was solid. The objective is clear from the beginning to the end, and the whole game is spent hunting and fighting the Metroids. However, fighting Metroids is basically the only challenge thrown at you difficulty-wise, while the bulk of the challenge is finding them all. In the end, it's a repetitive game, which would undoubtedly be helped with more variety. They nailed the exploration though. I think the ability to search around and find new areas and secrets was vastly improved from the series' first attempt. It needed to be better, given the game's demand to look everywhere. The flow isn't half bad, but the game was missing something to make everything click. Therefore, my final score for Metroid II Return of Samus will be 6.7 out of 10. Fans of the series should consider playing Metroid 2, while someone looking to get into Metroid should avoid starting with it. For the record, avoid starting with Metroid 1 as well. If you're looking for Metroid 2, the original version is, perhaps predictably, available on the Nintendo Switch Online service. The Game Boy section launched with some notable gaps, but Metroid 2 was part of it from the beginning. In 2017, a long-awaited official remake was made, named Metroid Samus Returns, which you can buy for the 3DS. I can't judge the remake yet. The original has some retro charm that I enjoy, even though I grew up with more modern games. The ending here suggests that the story isn't over, and little did people know that Metroid 3, known as Super Metroid, would be where the series truly became special. A random game getting a sequel after 5 years caused Electronic Gaming Monthly not to review it at all. Nintendo Power, on the other hand, was all about Metroid 2. It had a hat trick of being the front cover game, having a 10-page preview, and scoring an impressive 17 out of 20. It was very unusual for North America to get games before Japan, but in this case, Japan had to wait about 2 months before they could play Metroid 2. When they finally got it, Famitsu's average score only reached 6.25 out of 10. Tell me, did you agree with the points I've made? What rating would you give Metroid 2 Return of Samus for the Game Boy, initially released in 1991? Hit the like button to increase Samus's bounty, and subscribe to prevent another invasion. As ever, thank you for watching, and please continue to be your own unique self. Just a sign of the times. We truly live in an astronomy.